4 weeks of explosive testimony had numbed even the most jaded spectators until Judge Raynaud cracked open a sealed envelope, cleared his throat, and released a name that detonated in the hush like a flashbang: Kim Kardashian. Pens froze mid-stroke, reporters jolted upright, and Diddy's famously marble face flickered with something dangerously close to panic. In that heartbeat, the trial stopped being a procedural slow burn and became Hollywood's newest supernova, its blinding light aimed straight at the empire Diddy thought no one could touch. Diddy, who had floated through weeks of testimony with glacier-cold poise, suddenly looked breakable. A pulse twitched at his temple, diamond cufflinks clicked as his fist tightened, and for one telling second his gaze slid past the jury toward the exit, as though plotting escape from a narrative slipping out of his grip. In that hairline fracture, the entire gallery inhaled the scent of fear, realizing Kim's name hadn't just entered evidence, it had stabbed straight through the armor of hip-hop's untouchable king. The rumor itself had always moved like contraband, whispered by assistants under hairspray clouds, denied by publicists over midnight cocktails, retold in chauffeured SUVs as a cautionary campfire tale. Back at the 2016 Iconic Sound Awards, Kim slipped into Diddy's velvet-roped lounge for a quick hello, and re-emerged minutes later with eyes rimmed red, phone clenched white, murmuring, "I shouldn't have gone in." No complaint, no paperwork, just a phantom threaded through Hollywood's grapevine, easy to dismiss, impossible to forget, and, until this moment in court, never spoken where it could actually hurt. Diddy's lead attorney shot to his feet, voice sharpened to a blade as he slammed a fresh motion onto the bench, calling Kim's name prejudicial poison, meant to sway headlines, not jurors, but the judge, unblinking behind half-moon spectacles, let the courtroom's clamour subside before intoning, almost bored, that if a backstage moment could be corroborated, it belonged under the jury's microscope. One cool sentence that iced the defence's fury and signalled to everyone present that the door Kim had cracked open would stay that way, no matter how loudly Diddy's team tried to slam it shut. The night in question dripped with chrome-bright glamour. Chandeliers shimmed against mirrored walls, confetti cannons waited like loaded fireworks, and a river of couture swept down the Iconic Sound Awards carpet. Kim glided through it all sleepless serene, her liquid glass gown catching camera flashes like pocket lightning. She was scheduled to present, pose, and vanish, an exit strategy timed to the second. But just after trophies clinked backstage, a neatly worded message intercepted her path. Mr. Combs would like to say hello. Polite déjà vu. She'd exchanged air-kiss pleasantries with Diddy at half a dozen galas, but something about the invitation's late-hour hush gnawed at instinct. Still, she nodded, letting a headset-clad handler guide her past production crates and soundproof curtains, into a corridor that grew quieter, colder, narrower with every step, until the pulsing bass outside felt like a distant storm, and Diddy's lounge emerged ahead, guarded, dim, and separated from the world by a single velvet rope she would soon regret crossing. Inside, the air felt pre-packaged, expensive cologne folded over stale cigar smoke, while Diddy greeted her with a smile honed to laser precision, all charm on the surface, calculation underneath. Small talk fluttered, great performance, stunning dress, industry chatter delivered in velvety bass. But the room's energy shifted when the last hanger-on slipped out, and the curtain fell back into place, sealing them in. Diddy leaned closer, voice dropping to a hush that hummed against the low lights. "You ever feel the world watching so hard you forget what's real?" he asked, eyes studying her reaction like a scientist observing glassware. Kim offered a diplomatic nod, but unease prickled her skin. Then came the line that welded itself to her memory. "You're smart to go now. Not everyone knows when to leave." It wasn't loud, it wasn't threatening, yet it reverberated like a trap snapping shut, propelling her toward the exit before she could even pass why her heartbeat suddenly spiked. Dawn broke with a digital roar. Somewhere between midnight and morning, a grainy hallway photo escaped its evidence envelope and stampeded across every screen on the planet. In the image, Kim is mid-turn beneath harsh fluorescent light, arms crossed tight as body armour while Diddy looms a pace behind, torso angled forward, expression unreadable, no red carpet glow, no soft focus filter, just raw tension frozen in 1/125th of a second. Phones buzzed like hornets, publicists jolted from sleep, Hunt, Diddy files and March and Kim leak rocketed up the trends, and breakfast show anchors scrambled to rewrite their openers. Kim's own device lit up in relentless pulses, friends, brands, lawyers, her mother, yet she stared only at that photo, remembering the pressure in her chest as she'd fled that lounge. Millions saw a cryptic snapshot, she felt a visceral replay. By noon, pundits weren't asking if the image would be admitted, they were asking whether the jury could ever unsee it. Diddy's attorney pounced the moment court reconvened, striding to the lectern with the leaked photo in one hand and a thunder-coated objection in the other, insisting the image was tabloid venom that would drown rational judgment in clickbait hysteria. But the prosecutor, unhurried, almost amused, slid an inch-thick folder onto the evidence table. Each tab a prior Backstage map, each map a single-door VIP cocoon identical to the one Kim had fled. "One picture," she said, tapping the leak, "illustrates a pattern these plans prove." Murmurs rippled through the gallery as she flipped pages. 2013, 2014, 2015. Every event the same choke point design, always staffed by Diddy's own guards, never the venues. The judge studied the blueprints, then the photograph, then the stone-faced defendant. With a measured nod, he ruled the image admissible, declaring the jury entitled to evaluate behavioural consistency. A faint exhale swept the room like wind through cracked glass. The defence's bid to quarantine Kim's shadow had failed, and the pattern now stood glaring in full daylight. Barely had the ink dried on the judge's ruling when another breach jolted the internet awake. 3 cropped lines from Kim's sealed statement. "I entered Mr. Combs's suite alone. I felt deeply uncomfortable. I knew I had to leave," surfaced on a gossip site notorious for timing scoops to the minute hand of chaos. The single adjective uncomfortable blazed across headlines, dissected by pundits, hashtagged into a rallying cry, and printed on black and white protest signs outside the courthouse before lunch break. Cable anchors passed her syntax like forensic linguists. Body language experts looped B-roll of her past interviews, hunting flinches they'd never noticed. Inside the courtroom, jurors filed in visibly rattled, instructed to ignore coverage, yet clearly aware that the silence around Kim Kardashian had ruptured. The prosecution didn't rush a subpoena. Why sprint when momentum was marching for them? The only question swirling louder than speculation about Diddy's next move was this: how long can Kim stay off the stand when her leaked words already occupy it? The prosecution tightened the net with living echoes. First came the event photographer, hands trembling as he clutched a subpoenaed print. He'd been warned, he said, to keep his lens away from VIP access, yet one forbidden frame slipped through. Kim striding from the lounge, sunglasses on, lips pressed white. He'd almost deleted it after a stranger hissed, "You didn't see anything," but something in her posture haunted him. Next, a production coordinator took the stand. She recalled crossing paths with Kim seconds later, the hallway smell of dry ice and sweat still hanging in the air. She asked for the fastest exit, the coordinator testified, voice steady. All she said was, "I shouldn't have gone in." 2 witnesses, same 5 words, jurors traded glances that needed no translation. Suddenly, Kim's discomfort wasn't an isolated tremor, it was a chorus, and each repetition drove the point deeper into the courtroom's collective spine. Lights dimmed, monitors flickered, and suddenly Kim filled the courtroom. No glam squad, no filter, just a neat bun, bare walls, and eyes that dared the lens not to look away. Her voice, measured but trembling at the edges, cut through the hush. "I never wanted to turn a feeling into a headline, but I won't pretend it never happened." She recounted the shrinking lounge, the single exit, the moment instinct screamed louder than courtesy. "He didn't touch me, didn't say the words you'd put in quotations, but the room told its own story." Every pause felt like a held breath, every exhale a confession the industry had trained her to swallow. "Survival," she concluded softly, "shouldn't need receipts." The screen went black, and for a beat, the courtroom sat weightless, as if gravity itself waited to process what one of the world's most controlled women had finally chosen to release. Within hours, Kim's unvarnished testimony detonated beyond the courthouse walls, sparking what the blogs quickly christened the Quiet Reckoning. Actresses, stylists, and one retired pop star posted cryptic one-liners. That hallway. I was there too. Silence isn't safety. Each disappearing after 24 hours, yet screenshot a million times. Every repost felt like another hand tugging at the curtain Diddy had drawn around his world. Talk show hosts traded punchlines for solemn nods. Labels issued hushed internal reviews. Even brands that once begged for a Diddy endorsement scrubbed his name from campaign decks overnight. The swell wasn't loud or coordinated. It was a rising tide of micro-confessions, subtle unfollows, and midnight edits that signalled a cultural shift too massive to reverse. By sunset, the narrative no longer orbited one backstage encounter. It orbited the question crackling across feeds and newsrooms alike: if Kim finally spoke, who and what comes next? The next morning, Diddy's SUV rolled up to the courthouse gate, then kept driving. Inside the courtroom, his chair sat eerily pristine, a crisp nameplate flanked by untouched water bottles, while reporters outside fired off tweets faster than the bailiff could hiss, "Order." His lead attorney, cheeks wan beneath a practiced smile, rose to inform the judge that Mr. Combs was exercising his right to be absent for the day's proceedings. The subtext rang louder than the statement. The man who once swaggered through every room like a human spotlight was effectively ghosting his own trial. Jaws clenched, the jury tracked that empty seat as though it might sprout a confession. And while the legal playbook allowed his absence, optics had no such clause. In one vanished figure, the gallery saw retreat, masquerading as strategy, proof that the ground beneath hip-hop's emperor was crumbling faster than even his high-priced defense could patch. With Diddy's chair still conspicuously vacant, the prosecution rolled out a digital exhibit that replaced speculation with geometry, a 3D rendering of the 2016 Backstage floor plan, spun onto the courtroom screens, corridors glowing in cool blue, except for one ominous red box labelled VIP Lounge. Only one entrance, one exit, no venue cameras inside, security staffed exclusively by Diddy's team. Then the render flickered, and a decade-long montage of event schematics cycled through. 2013 Gala, 2014 Festival, 2015 Charity Ball, each blueprint identical, each red box a carbon copy stamped Private Mr. Combs. As the patterns piled up, jurors leaned forward in near synchrony. This wasn't a single oddity, it was architectural habit, a design language of control. The prosecutor's closing line landed like a gavel inside a gavel. If rooms could testify, Your Honour, these would speak louder than any witness we've called. On what everyone sensed was the trial's home stretch, a former executive assistant, anonymous until that morning, took the stand wearing a simple black blazer that looked more armour than attire. She wasn't listed as a victim, she clarified. She was a witness to the machinery. I scheduled rooms, not rumours, she began, voice steady. But the rooms taught me more than any memo. She described standing guard outside red box lounges, instructed to confiscate staff phones, to filter the vibe before VIPs entered. Her pivot landed with surgical precision. When Kim walked out that night, she didn't look lost, she looked decided. That's when I realised survival in those spaces was a silent skill set. She paused, scanning 12 jurors who suddenly felt like 13. Keeping quiet made me complicit. I'm finished with that. No cross-examination could dull the impact. She'd shifted the conversation from isolated misconduct to institutional complicity, and the hush that followed sounded a lot like consensus. When the jury finally withdrew, the courtroom felt less like a stage stripped of actors than a sanctuary processing aftershocks. Fluorescent lights hummed, pencils lay idle, and Diddy's empty chair now looked like an exhibit unto itself. Hours ticked past with no verdict. But outside, a different judgment took root. Sponsors freezing contracts, collaborators issuing value statements, fans replaying Kim's testimony until the timestamps blurred. The prosecution packed their files with measured efficiency, yet their half-smiles betrayed a deeper certainty that whatever the panel decided behind closed doors, the culture had already rendered its sentence. By dusk, reporters weren't asking whether Diddy would walk, they were debating how far the quiet reckoning might ripple, whose velvet-roped rooms would be mapped next, and which silence would break after hearing Kim's crack. The trial's outcome remained sealed, but the truth had escaped the building hours ago. and no verdict could usher it back inside.